Imagine a crowd gathered on a hillside overlooking the Sea of Galilee. Ordinary people, fishermen, farmers, mothers, have come to hear a remarkable teacher, Jesus. His words, known as the Sermon on the Mount, offer a new way of living, open to everyone, under the sky. As we listen, we join that ancient crowd ready to hear wisdom that still speaks to us today. So, what is Matthew 7 really about? At its core, this chapter is a deep dive into the nature of relationships. It explores our relationship with other people, our relationship with God, and most importantly, our relationship with ourselves. Jesus understands that life is built on these connections. He knows that how we interact with the world around us defines the quality of our existence. He doesn't give us a long list of rigid rules. Instead, he focuses on the principles that should guide our hearts and our actions. He is less concerned with what we do and more concerned with why we do it. One of the central themes is discernment. This is a word that simply means the ability to judge well, to see things clearly. Jesus challenges us to look at the world with wisdom. He asks us to see the difference between true and false, between a solid foundation and shifting sand. This isn't about being critical or cynical. It is about being wise. He wants us to be able to recognize goodness and truth when we see it. In a world full of mixed messages and confusing choices, this skill is more valuable than ever. Matthew 7 provides a kind of lens to help us see more clearly. Another key theme is authenticity. Jesus speaks strongly against hypocrisy, which is the act of pretending to be something you are not. He wants our inner life to match our outer life. He tells a memorable story about trying to remove a tiny speck of dust from someone else's eye while you have a giant log in your own. It's a humorous but powerful image. It reminds us to look at ourselves honestly before we rush to judge or fix others. This call for authenticity is a call for integrity. It's an invitation to be real, to be genuine, and to live a life that is whole and consistent. Finally, the chapter is about action. It's not enough to just listen to these beautiful words. It's not enough to agree with them in our minds. Jesus makes it very clear that faith must be put into practice. He ends the sermon with the story of two builders, one who builds his house on rock and another who builds on sand. The storm comes for both houses, but only the one with a strong foundation survives. The lesson is simple. Hearing the words is just the beginning. The real work and the real reward comes from doing them. Matthew 7 is a call to be a doer, not just a hearer. It is easy to think of the Bible as an ancient book, filled with stories and rules for a world that no longer exists. We might wonder, what can words spoken on a Galilean hillside 2 millennia ago possibly mean for us today? We live in a world of smartphones, social media, and global networks. Our problems seem so different, so much more complex. We face challenges of digital identity, political division, and environmental concerns. How can the simple agrarian teachings of Jesus in Matthew 7 possibly connect with the fast-paced, high-tech reality of the 21st century? The answer is that they connect profoundly. Think about the first teaching in the chapter, do not judge, or you too will be judged. In an age of online comment sections and instant public shaming, has there ever been a more relevant piece of advice? We can ruin a person's reputation with a single click, often without knowing the full story. Jesus' warning about judging others is a powerful antidote to the culture of outrage that can dominate our digital lives. He reminds us to approach others with humility and grace, to look at our own faults before we point out the faults of others. This isn't old-fashioned advice. It is urgent and necessary wisdom for our time. Consider the golden rule, also found in this chapter. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. This single sentence is a universal principle for ethical living. It cuts through all cultural and religious divides. In our deeply interconnected yet often divided world, this rule is a roadmap to peace and understanding. It applies to how we conduct business, how we treat our neighbors, how nations interact with one another, and how we engage with people who are different from us. It challenges us to act with empathy, to put ourselves in another person's shoes before we speak or act. The final story of the wise and foolish builders also speaks directly to our modern lives. We are all building something, a career, a family, a reputation, a legacy. The question Jesus poses is, what are we building it on? Are we building on the shifting sands of popular opinion, material success, or fleeting fame? Or are we building on the solid rock of integrity, compassion, and timeless truth? The storms of life, job loss, illness, personal failure, global crises, will come to us all. Matthew 7 asks us to consider what will keep us standing when those storms hit. The principles in this chapter are that solid rock. As we prepare to walk through Matthew 7 together, let's look at the path ahead. Our exploration will be like a guided tour through this rich and beautiful landscape of wisdom. We will not rush. We will take our time, stopping to examine each key teaching. We will break down the chapter into manageable parts, making its powerful ideas clear and accessible. The goal is not just to understand what Jesus said, but to see how we can live it. This journey is about moving from information to transformation, from learning ancient words to applying them in our modern lives. Our first stop will be the famous and often misunderstood command, "Do not judge." We will look closely at what Jesus meant. Was he saying we should never make judgments about right and wrong? Or was he pointing to a deeper problem with hypocritical, self-righteous condemnation? We will unpack the memorable image of the speck and the log, and discover how this teaching can free us from the burden of criticism and help us build healthier, more compassionate relationships with the people around us. This first section sets the stage for the rest of the chapter, focusing first on our own hearts. From there, we will move to one of the most encouraging passages in all of Scripture. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. This is a beautiful promise about prayer and our relationship with God. We will explore what it means to ask, seek, and knock with persistence and faith. We will discuss how this teaching can give us hope in difficult times and confidence that we are not alone in our struggles. It is a message that God is not a distant, uncaring force but a loving Father who delights in giving good gifts to His children. Finally, we will examine the chapter's powerful concluding warnings and choices. We will walk through the narrow gate and the wide gate, exploring the choices we make every day. We will learn how to recognize false prophets by their fruits, a practical test for discerning truth from deception. And we will end with the unforgettable story of the two builders, one wise and one foolish. This final parable ties everything together, challenging us to build our lives on the solid foundation of Jesus' teachings. This chapter is a gift, a guide, and a challenge, and our journey through it begins now. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says, "Do not judge or you too will be judged." We all make judgments every day about people, choices, and situations, but Jesus warns against judging from pride or condemnation as if we know everything. This kind of judgment divides us and invites the same harshness back upon ourselves. Jesus used a vivid image. Why notice the speck in your brother's eye, but ignore the plank in your own? Imagine someone with a huge beam in their eye trying to help with a tiny speck. It's absurd, and that's the point. Jesus calls us to look in the mirror first, to address our own flaws before judging others. Only then can we truly help others with humility and kindness. Every day we must judge, but Jesus warns us, judge actions, not people. Right judgment seeks truth and growth, rooted in humility and love. Self-righteous judgment, however, elevates ourselves by tearing others down. The difference? One builds up, the other destroys. Humility frees us from the exhausting burden of judging others. When we let go of condemnation, we can relax, love people as they are, and focus on our own growth. This path builds authentic community, one rooted in grace, not fear, where true healing and connection can happen. As we move through Matthew chapter 7, we see that Jesus doesn't leave us without tools for discernment. He simply reframes how we should use them. A few verses later, he warns about false prophets who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. How are we to identify them if we are not to judge? Jesus gives a clear and practical test. By their fruit you will recognize them. He is telling us to shift our focus from judging a person's inner motives, their heart, their soul, their root, to observing the tangible outcomes of their life and teachings, their fruit. This is a profound and practical shift. We cannot know what is in a person's heart. We cannot see their secret intentions or their hidden spiritual state. Trying to judge this root is what leads to the arrogant, condemning judgment that Jesus warns against. It is like trying to judge the health of a tree by digging around its unseen root system. We are more likely to do damage than to gain any real insight. Instead, Jesus tells us to become fruit inspectors. We are to look at the observable evidence in a person's life. This is a judgment of actions, not of essence. What is this fruit that we are supposed to inspect? The Bible speaks of it elsewhere as qualities like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Does a person's life, their words, and their influence produce these things in themselves and in others? Or does their life produce bad fruit like division, anger, arrogance, selfishness, and harm? This is a much more reliable test. We may not know if a leader's heart is pure, but we can see if their ministry consistently leads to broken relationships and hurt people. We can judge the fruit. This principle applies far beyond identifying false prophets. It is a wise guide for all our relationships and choices. When choosing friends, leaders, or partners, we can look at their fruit. Do they have a track record of kindness and integrity? Are their relationships healthy and stable? When evaluating a new idea or ideology, we can ask, what is the fruit of this way of thinking? Does it lead to more compassion and justice in the world, or more hatred and division? By focusing on the observable fruit, we practice the right and necessary judgment Jesus calls us to, while avoiding the proud and destructive judgment of the root he forbids. After teaching us to look inward, Jesus invites us to connect with God. Ask, and it will be given. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened. Each word, ask, seek, knock, calls us to deeper engagement, to voice our needs, pursue answers, and persist with hope. Jesus promises when we reach out, the door will open. Jesus shows us God's heart by comparing him to a loving father. No parent would give their hungry child a stone instead of bread, or a snake instead of a fish. God is not distant or harsh, but a perfect father who delights in giving good gifts. When we pray, we can trust we are heard and loved, just like a child with their father. The progression from asking to seeking and finally to knocking implies a journey that requires persistence. Jesus reinforces this idea with the powerful statement, "For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened." This is an absolute promise. It doesn't say some people who ask or those who are worthy, it says everyone. This universal assurance invites us to be persistent. It tells us that our efforts in prayer are never wasted. Even when the answers feel slow to arrive, we are encouraged to keep going, to continue asking, seeking, and knocking. This call to persistence is not because God is unwilling to answer us. It is not as if we have to wear God down with our constant requests until he finally gives in. The parable of the loving father already showed us that God is eager to give. So why is persistence necessary? Often the process of persistent prayer changes us. The time spent waiting, seeking, and knocking can deepen our faith, clarify our desires, and align our hearts more closely with God's will. Sometimes the journey is as important as the destination. The process of seeking teaches us to rely on God more fully. Think of an athlete training for a marathon. They don't become strong overnight. They show up day after day, pushing through fatigue and discomfort. Their persistence builds endurance and strength. In the same way, persistent prayer builds our spiritual endurance. When we continue to knock on a door that remains closed for a season, we are exercising our faith muscle. We are learning to trust in God's timing and wisdom, even when we don't understand it. This process can forge a depth of character within us that a quick and easy answer never could. It teaches us patience and strengthens our resolve. Furthermore, persistence demonstrates the true depth of our desire. When we ask for something once and then forget about it, it shows it wasn't that important to us. But when we keep knocking, it shows that this is a deep longing of our heart. It is a declaration that we believe so strongly that an answer is possible that we refuse to give up. This kind of persistent, faith-filled prayer honors God. It shows that we are taking his invitation seriously. We are not just casually tossing a request into the universe. We are actively and earnestly engaging with our Heavenly Father, trusting in his promise to open the door. Jesus promises our Father gives good gifts to those who ask. But like a loving parent, God gives what we truly need, not just what we want. The best gifts are often deeper, his presence, guidance, and peace. We can trust his love, even when the answer is no. The teaching on asking, seeking, and knocking is not a passive philosophy, it is a call to action. It's really the bridge between our needs and God's provision. The promise is incredible, but it requires our participation. The gift is offered, but we must be willing to ask for it. The treasure is hidden, but we must be willing to seek it. The door is ready to be opened, but we must have the courage to knock on it. Faith is not just believing that God can help, it is actively stepping out and asking for that help. It is the engine that drives us to engage with the divine invitation. Receiving is also an active process. When the door is opened, we must be willing to walk through it. When the answer comes, we must be willing to accept it, even if it's not what we expected. Sometimes the answer to our prayer for patience is a frustrating situation that forces us to practice it. The answer to our prayer for courage might be a challenge that we must face. Receiving God's good gifts often means embracing the new path He sets before us. It requires us to be attentive and responsive, to see His hand at work in our lives, and to align our actions with the answers He provides. This principle transforms prayer from a wish list into a dynamic partnership. It is a continuous cycle of conversation and response. We ask, God answers. We seek, God reveals. We knock, God opens. And then we act on what we have received, which often leads us to new needs and new prayers. This is how our relationship with God grows and deepens over time. It is a living, breathing connection, not a one-time transaction. It is about walking with our Father every day, constantly communicating our needs, and being open to His guidance and provision in every area of our lives. Ultimately, this passage is a profound source of hope. It assures us that we are not alone in our struggles. It tells us that the universe is not cold and indifferent, but is governed by a loving Father who is actively listening and eager to respond. Whether we are facing a small daily frustration or a life-altering crisis, the invitation remains the same. Ask, seek, knock. This simple, powerful command gives us a direct line to the source of all strength, wisdom, and love. It is a key that unlocks the door to a deeper faith and a life built on the assurance that we are heard, known, and cherished. Jesus teaches the golden rule: do to others what you would have them do to you. This simple, powerful principle sums up the law and the prophets. Because we've received God's goodness, we're called to reflect it, actively doing good, not just avoiding harm. Treat others as you want to be treated. It's the master key to living out love. The golden rule isn't just don't hurt others, it's a call to action. Jesus asks us to take initiative, to bring kindness and help to others, not just avoid causing harm. Imagine welcoming a new neighbor, not just ignoring them. The golden rule means seeing everyone as worthy of compassion, no matter how they treat us. At the heart of the golden rule is empathy. To do to others what you would have them do to you, you must imagine yourself in their position, see the world from their perspective, feel what they feel. This act of empathy can change the tone of any conflict, building bridges instead of walls, and connecting us more deeply to the shared human experience. In our digital age, the golden rule is more relevant than ever. Online, it's easy to forget the humanity behind every screen. Before posting or sharing, ask, would I want this said about me? Let's use our digital tools to spread kindness, truth, and encouragement, being a source of light in a connected world. One of the most remarkable things about the Golden Rule is its universality. While Jesus presents it as the summation of Jewish law and prophecy, versions of this principle have appeared in nearly every major religion and ethical philosophy throughout human history. From Confucius in ancient China to the philosophers of Greece and the teachings of Hinduism and Islam, the idea of treating others as you wish to be treated is a common thread in human wisdom. This suggests that it is not just a religious law, but a fundamental truth about how human societies can flourish. It is a law written on the human heart. In a world that often seems more divided than ever, this universal principle is a powerful point of common ground. We may disagree on politics, religion, and culture, but most people can agree on the basic goodness of the Golden Rule. It provides a shared starting point for dialogue and reconciliation. It allows us to cut through our complex disagreements and appeal to a simple, shared human value. If we could all commit to living by this one rule, it would transform our families, our communities, and our international relations. It is a simple key to a more peaceful and just world. Living out the Golden Rule is a radical act of hope. It is a vote of confidence in the power of kindness and empathy to overcome hatred and division. When we choose to do good to someone who has not done good to us, We are breaking the cycle of retaliation. We are introducing a new and unexpected element into the equation: grace. This is how change begins. It does not begin with grand government programs or international treaties, though those have their place. It begins with individual people in their daily lives choosing to treat others with the dignity and kindness they themselves desire. Ultimately, the golden rule is the practical application of love. It is what love looks like in action. It is simple enough for a child to understand, yet profound enough to challenge us for a lifetime. It is the core of Jesus' ethical teaching and the foundation for a life that is both pleasing to God and a blessing to the world. As we move forward from this peak of the sermon, this rule will serve as our compass, constantly reorienting us toward a life of active, empathetic, and universal love for the people we share this planet with. It is the timeless guide for how to live well with others. As Jesus ends his Sermon on the Mount, he tells a final story. Two men build houses, one on rock, one on sand. Both look strong, but only one stands when storms come. The foundation makes all the difference. What will you build your life on? After both houses are built, a storm comes. Rain, floods, and wind batter both homes. The storm is certain and strikes everyone, regardless of their choices. Only in adversity is the true strength of a foundation revealed. The house on the rock stands firm. The house on the sand collapses completely. The storm exposes what was hidden in calm, the result of our choices. In life, trials are inevitable, but our foundation determines if we endure or fall. The solid rock is not just hearing Jesus' words, but living them out. Obedience, daily, practical, sometimes difficult, is the true foundation. Building on the rock means choosing integrity, forgiveness, and love even when it's hard. This work is slow and unseen, but it creates unshakable stability. Storms will come, but a life anchored in obedience to Jesus stands strong. Focus on the foundation, not appearances. That's where real security lies. The foolish builder heard the same words but didn't act on them. Hearing without doing is building on sand, unstable, easily swept away. It's easy to mistake knowledge or good intentions for real change. A life built on shifting values or empty belief collapses under pressure. Jesus warns, only action, not just agreement, creates lasting security. The choice is clear: do the hard work of building on the rock or risk ruin on the sand. Jesus' parable leaves us with a question. What is your foundation? Every decision is a brick in your life's structure. Building on the rock means aligning actions with Jesus' teachings, not just admiring them. A divided life, belief without practice, is a house on sand, doomed to fall. Integrity is making your inner and outer life one. The promise: build on the rock and your life will stand no matter the storm. Matthew 7 is more than ancient words, it's a living challenge. Jesus' sermon guides us inward, upward, outward, and finally to our foundation. He offers simple, profound truths for a life of meaning and resilience. The echo of his words calls us to humility, faith, and action. The real test is not in hearing, but in building our lives on what we've heard. Now the choice is ours. Will we act or let the echo fade? Matthew chapter 7 gives us 4 pillars for a strong life: humility, faith, love, and wisdom. Humility frees us from judgment. Faith invites us to ask, seek, and trust God. Love is the golden rule in action, shaping our relationships. Wisdom means living what we learn, building on solid rock. Together, these pillars help us endure any storm. The purpose of Jesus' sermon is to bridge the gap between ancient words and our daily lives. The real test is how we act in everyday moments, on social media, with family, or when no one is watching. Start small. Focus on one teaching, like the Golden Rule, and practice it this week. Over time, these small acts build a life on solid rock, a living testament to timeless wisdom. As we reach the end of our journey, Matthew 7 leaves us with unshakable hope. A life built on Jesus' words stands firm, no matter the storm. In a world of shifting foundations, his teachings are our solid rock. Choose the rock, and you become a beacon of hope, secure, resilient, and a blessing to others.